Hi, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Weekend Review. The Supreme Court of the United States has concluded its 2014-15 season with some important decisions. Mariana Cordier, a local attorney, will review them for us. The League of Women Voters of the United States operates a lobby corps that focuses on the Congress and goes up there to explain issues of importance to the League and represents folks from all over the country, League members who cannot make it to Washington in person. Elaine Apter from the Montgomery County League is a member of the lobby corps. She's here to give us all the details. Recently, the issue of testing in our middle and high schools has been in the news. Shirley, Brandman, who comments on a regular basis on our program, has all the details. Montgomery County has many advisory boards and commissions that obtain their members from the local population. Jeffrey Slavin, the mayor of the town of Somerset, and a member of one of these boards, as well as a birthday boy today, is here to explain the importance of these great institutions. Mariana Cordier, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
The court, we often are talking about local issues.
Right.
But what this Supreme Court has done recently, we've got affordable health care, right, same-sex marriage, even license plates and the Confederate flag. Right. All these things have local implications, don't they?
Oh, they do definitely have impact. I think for the country nationwide, the one that has the biggest impact is the Affordable Health Care Act, because that put a stop to the idea that it is illegal or for the states to contest that they have the ability and they should offer these affordable marketplaces for everyone to have insurance. And then the second big one, or you could say comparably maybe the same level in importance, because it is a huge issue, is the same-sex marriages and the right to be able to be married to your significant other and be of the same sex and be recognized. And that will have an impact, I think, in the business community as well. And it's all positive. It's all good.
So a national issue, instead of being states making decisions, and the Constitution says that these should be recognized in other states if it happens in one state, and that wasn't happening. What does this tell us about the court?
Well, it's hard, because then again you have the decision with regard to the Clean Air Act, where the court found that before the EPA can really fine and force violators to clean up what they've done to the environment, that first there should be an assessment of the cost analysis of doing something like that. And although it seems pro-business, one of the things you need to take into consideration is we need our planet clean, and the toxicity of the contaminants is a huge issue, and that leaned towards what I would say more of a conservative right against big government interference with business, those kinds of issues.
And I think I remember from looking at this, one of the tricky parts of that whole thing is the fact that the statute that Congress passed way back when includes exactly that language of cost and things. So things have moved now 40 years later, and we shouldn't be thinking about it. Unfortunately, the statute law is a tricky business.
It is. Language is very important, because when you pass a law, everyone's thinking, okay, that's great, we got the law. But then come the lawyers. And how do you enforce the law? And what do the words mean in the definition?
Well, the Affordable Care Act decision got hung up on the language of the statute, right? It was a drafting language, but there you had the Chief Justice saying, but it's very clear what the intention was here, and our job as the court is really to be able to preserve that as long as it is in keeping with the Constitution.
Absolutely, and that's what's important, and that was what was so great about that, and to see Justice Roberts come out for the Affordable Health Care Act gives you some hope that it's just not decisions being made based on political affiliation, but it has to do maybe with your conscience. It has to do with what's right or wrong, or maybe thinking about ego-wise, your legacy, what you're leaving behind.
But I think one of the things that I think in that decision too is what used to happen was, because you couldn't foresee all of the issues. No law can foresee all of the fact patterns in the future. And after a few weeks and see, hey, wait, we goofed here, we goofed there, there was always this thing called technical amendments come in, and that would be bipartisan. This is what we sure. But in this nasty atmosphere on the Hill, they can't even get those passed anymore. So
and with the Supreme Court, historically, there have been times where a Republican has appointed a justice or a Democrat has appointed a justice thinking that they're going to be going in that party line, and over time those justices' decisions have realigned to something different, and surprisingly so.
Like Justice Souter.
Exactly,
Right.
like Justice Souter and others. So historically there's always been, when you appoint a justice, that hold your
Sure.
breath, which way is this really going to play out?
Do you think the Supreme Court is getting more powerful in the balance of power?
You know, the Supreme Court, it has its place in our government is, you know, the three branches. I think that we give at times in history more or less importance to Supreme Court based on the legislation we're passing and the laws we're trying to make. But the Supreme Court can have a definite influence to the outcome. But like I said to many when I used to teach, the Supreme Court is dealing with the laws that we have in place now. That doesn't stop the legislature from passing laws.
But it's really interesting also if we think about the same-sex marriage issue, right? You did see a strategy at the grassroots level to start at the state level, and you started watching state legislators, and you started watching, and so by the time the Supreme Court is actually coming to the issue, because they held it off, right? They sequenced it. They could have gotten to some of these issues earlier in the Defense of Marriage Act, but they waited, and so there was a little bit more of a sense of the country and other local elected officials, state courts deciding, and then it bubbling up, which is exactly what you want the court to do.
Got 15 seconds left.
nonprofit groups for the same-sex marriage had an excellent strategy from day one and executed flawlessly. So
Yeah, I think the
But
thing,
it's still
hats off to
amazing
them.
how quickly it moved, I
Yeah.
will say,
Oh, yeah.
personally.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
it was amazing. And Mariana Cordier, you're amazing for coming here on so many issues, local, national, on legal issues. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
And speaking about national issues, local implications, the lobby corps of the League of Women Voters of the USA. Elaine Apter, welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back.
All right, so give me a scenario. You get a call from Seattle and says, Elaine, we got fishing issues up here. Can you go down to Washington and go lobby for us?
Not quite. But we have a corps of men and women because, you know, the League is open to men.
I'm a member.
Good for you. Anyway, we meet once a month, and the National League selects an issue that is coming up. Either there's legislation coming up or rumors of legislation or something going on. And we get a briefing.
Okay.
And then we get targeted congressmen to talk to. And my states are very interesting. They're Louisiana, and Missouri, and parts of California, because nobody can take California on a whole. So they're very, very different. So I get this briefing, and then basically I call and make an appointment. And I usually talk to a congressional aide who that's their field.
Okay, now when you
I'm
go in
working.
Louisiana, do you put on a Louisiana bell
well,
hat?
I
and
do
little...
a little bit of homework,
Oh, that's
I
good.
have to say, to see where the senator, the congressman stands. And
So how many people are in the lobby corps?
there are about 20 of us. And we have
20 lobby corps for the entire
for the
Congress.
entire Congress. But we usually, I think, target about 10 congressmen or senators a month on a specific issue.
And are there particular priority issues for the League?
Yes, the National League sets priorities, and now lately, basically, when you mentioned the Clean Air Act, or EPA, one of the things we have done, I think it was last month or then a month before, was basically talk to some of the congressmen and say, please don't monkey around with the Clean Air Act. There are bills coming up that you know could really threaten them, and we alert them to these bills. And sometimes the aides are aware, and sometimes they're not aware of what's coming up the pike. So,
Do the local league chapters have any input in the national strategy?
yes, League is bottom up, so when they do priorities, they ask all the local leagues basically to send in, and they look at the priorities. And of course, they're based on the league positions. We cannot lobby unless we have studied consensus and actually have a position. So there are times where our hands are tied and we'd like to say something, and we have to keep
Elaine,
our mouth shut.
calling a Louisiana congressperson.
Yes.
or senator, one of the first questions that the Praetorian Guard asks is, "Where are you from? Where are you from?
Are you from our district?"
Right. And so what do you do? Are you Geneviève Delacour of Bayou Country,
No,
Louisiana?
Well, at this point, I have been in contact with them, so they know me pretty much.
No, but
when I first started, I said I was from the League of Women Voters and I represent the whole league. However, I tell them I am in contact with the local league president, which I am. I send a report after every meeting to what the,
And do you encourage the local league to follow up with emails or
Yes,
other ways
and
to
that's
reinforce
done mainly from nationals. So, but what we usually do basically is get a feel for where that congressman or senator is. What are the problems they foresee in a bill? What don't they like about the bill? What they do like about the bill? And that's what we report back, because we do have a professional lobbyist. So they're the ones that
so
will
that you
really
can help
do
influence further advocacy, or
yes.
even let sponsors of the bill know where some of the issues are.
of that is. So basically, we're doing the groundwork a lot of times.
I love this idea. I do a lot of training in grassroots advocacy.
Terrific.
And
it's fascinating.
I can't imagine why you don't have 1,000 members.
Well, one,
this.
it's time consuming.
Sure.
And two, it does take a person that's willing to go in and actually, talk and lobby about something.
Yeah, and you have to actually show up and be able to wait, because they sometimes make you wait
Oh,
long time.
yes. And we say 5 minutes, so I'm meeting in the halls, I'm meeting, all over.
And what kind of training is there? Do they take you through a practice session?
Yes, and we have sample emails, sample reports. We do have a coordinator, and your first few sessions you work with her, Carol, and you go along with her, and she looks at your reports and things.
So I'm curious, what was the most unusual experience you had as a lobby?
Just real quick, about 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's a good question. It really, not so much unusual, but there is one office that I haven't been able to get into yet, which to me is a challenge more than anything else.
Let's talk off camera.
Okay.
We'll get you in that office. We'll get you in that office.
You got it.
Elaine Apter, always a pleasure. Look forward to having you come back real soon.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Shirley, testing is all about schooling Brandman. No, it's not. Gotta bring a smile. Testing is and welcome back, Shirley. By
Thank
the way.
you. Thanks.
Former
Good to be here.
president of the Montgomery County Board of Education and great education expert. And testing has been so controversial in our county. And the president
Really nationally.
And national, but as we look at it within the national scope, and even as Congress is debating wholesale changes
Absolutely.
to No Child Left Behind, All Children Left Behind, whichever angle you go on. But this county, we always consider ourselves at the forefront, cutting edge, smart people here. What is the current state of testing here?
So it's a moment in education, not just at the county level, but nationally, when I think we are really starting to examine whether we've gotten the balance wrong. Clearly, there is a place for assessments in teaching and learning. We need to know whether our students are mastering the subjects that we're teaching them. But are we over-testing? That's really what's driving this conversation. So we have our state superintendent, Lillian Lowry, encouraging all local boards in Maryland to look at their testing regimen. There are some tests that we're required to give by virtue of the state telling us to do so, but then we layer on top the local tests. So what Montgomery County is doing is looking at those local tests. We are ahead of the curve. They got ahead of this and started looking at it because board members asked to have it looked at. We now have had, though, the Maryland General Assembly has put together a task force to look at the testing load all throughout the state, and they'll get recommendations next year. So we're going to start to see this happening in many places. We've read in the news Loudoun County has eliminated final exams in the middle school and high school. Now, they articulated their reason was because they want to move towards more project-based learning, more experience, more hands-on, and assessments would need to be different than sitting for 2 hours and bubbling it. So Montgomery County, too, it's the same question. there's a place for testing, but we don't want it to eat into instructional time.
Sure.
We don't want to use tests that come at the last day of school when the students get no benefit from feedback about what they've learned, and the teachers can't change instruction. So we don't want to have wasteful, irrelevant sort of testing. And we want to have testing that that's tied to the instruction. So in looking it all over, what the board did actually just this Tuesday at their board meeting, they did decide that at the middle school, they were going to eliminate these 2-hour block final exams, with the exception of students who are taking high school classes. Students taking high school classes will follow sort of the high school regimen. With respect to the proposal for high school, and the administration offered several different options. There was community input, there was stakeholder input. And the options looked at various permutations. Should we spread the testing out? Should we eliminate it completely? And what they did was they decided, it has a lot of tentacles and implications. So they referred it back to their policy committee, but clearly in a spirit of wanting to make some change. And so the idea is that rather than have in courses, for example, where you may already be taking a state test, we have these new PARCC exams that are tied to the Common Core. Why then layer on top of it a local 2-hour final exam? So the question is, can we eliminate those?
I believe that was one sentence.
There you go.
That's the longest sentence ever. That was great.
No, but one of the things that I noticed as an employer in getting interns in the office is that they're real great about if you give them a test that seems like it's test-oriented, but the common sense of dealing with clients, of even problem-solving when you give them a test to get some information, whatever, is so difficult for them to overcome that it seems to me that they're not really learning anything. They're just being trained to do tricks.
Well, I don't know if it's quite at that level, but there is definitely a concern about not wanting to spend all your time directed towards what's on the test. So you need to leave time for the soft skills. There's also many different ways to assess. It doesn't have to be in a standardized test. And I think it's the standardized tests that draw the most ire.
But isn't the issue when you're talking about standardized tests versus alternative methods, that's what we grew up with, was alternative. And you're looking at me might be different from Elaine Apter's, maybe different from the others. So the standardized test, how can we compete against Korea? How can we compete against Finland? Or name your enemy out there against our education levels.
Right.
How do you balance this so that we're balancing apples with apples?
Well, what is it that we're trying to actually understand with the assessment is the first question we have to ask, right? If I have been teaching you how to do problem solving in a particular area of math, and I give you a problem that you've never seen before, and I let you work with 2 or 3 other students to puzzle it through and share ideas and figure it out, you are applying the skills that I've taught you. I don't have to simply give you a sheet where you bubble in the answer is A, B, C, or D. So we can really be getting at the skills we want to see our students have. To your point, we can see how students work in a team. We can see how students approach information they've never seen before. We can see how they apply things in a completely different context than what it was taught. And so some of it is freeing ourselves from the idea. I mean, the advantage of standardized tests is that they're quick and easy. You can get the results quickly, and so there's a place for them. There are times when a teacher wants to know right away, did the students master what I was trying to teach? If not, I need to go back and reteach. But it can't be the only kind of test, and we don't need multiple iterations of the same. And I think that's really the challenge that the board is grappling with.
I wish we could have just hours to talk about this, but our time is up. Shirley, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to be back to keep following this story and all the other stories in the Shirley Brandman education world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Slavin.
Yes, sir.
Now, everything that's been discussed here thus far has a commission or an agency or an organization that's involved with it.
Correct, in the county.
And here in Montgomery County, we have a wonderful multitude of avenues through which our citizens can participate in the direction of our government.
That's right. And actually help the government do its job. In a lot of these areas, there isn't enough staff or leadership. I mean, the county council couldn't do it all. And there's also boards and commissions like the one that I'm on, Landlord-Tenant Commission, where decisions are actually being made that are cutting down the clogging of the court system.
So let's talk a little bit. You're the landlord-tenant. Let's use that as an example for the county. By the way, do we have an idea of how many different boards, commissions?
There are over 80.
80, okay.
And if you go to the website, there's a description. The Montgomery County website, there's a description. There's also a very easy application process. Now, you have to go through a lot of political bumps in the road to get appointed, but most people do get appointed.
So maybe 10, 20 members per commission. So we're talking about 800 to 1,600 people.
Correct.
Basically in
Correct.
this. All right, so let's talk about yours as an
Landlord
example.
tenant, right.
And we can all have questions as we're going.
Right.
Tell us how many people are
There
on
are 15,
it?
15 members, 5 landlord
Okay.
representatives, 5 tenant representatives, and 5 consumer or public members.
Okay.
So for those of you that are interested in an issue that you have no expertise on, you can still have something to contribute
So
and
how
learn
do
a
cases
lot.
come to you?
Well, the complainant, whether it's a landlord or a tenant,
Mm-hmm.
files a complaint with the office, and then there's a whole process of review and attempt at conciliation.
Right.
And when it can't be reconciled, then it goes. Then the commission votes whether or not to take the case, just like the Supreme Court.
Oh, there you go.
How do you know there's an opening for a position? Now, I know the league does get notices, and we do post
Well,
them.
I
What
think
about
that the
average
county.
person?
Well, it's well publicized. The county puts out a lot of communication, and I think that individual civic groups, I think the league publicizes
league
it.
publicizes
So when there's a vacancy on a board or commission, that's publicized, and there's they all have term limits.
Mm-hmm.
How long is your term?
My term is 2 years.
2 years.
And there's some really powerful boards in our county, like the planning board is one of the boards that and think of the work that, and some of these boards
That's a full-time
actually,
job as the chair, is it not?
Yes, that is a full-time job, but the other members are not full-time, but they do get paid. Some of these boards you do get paid, or you get paid for going to the meetings.
Okay.
And there's also rules about the meeting. You have to attend meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put a plug in for the Commission on Children and Youth, which is one
Okay.
of them, because that actually has youth members. And so you can have students who serve on, and they are amazing. And the youth on that commission have started powerful sort of speak outs, have testified in front of the board and the council on behalf. And I had the wonderful opportunity of serving before I was on the Board of Education. It is a terrific opportunity to learn more. But I'm curious in yours, because there's some expertise in deciding some of these cases, do people tend to stay, are there multiple terms? Can you do it for more than 2 years? Because once you learn.
Yes, you can. There are term limits.
And landlord-tenant affairs really gets to multiple issues. For instance, if you have a large landlord with leasing multiple apartment units who may have policies or procedures, I don't want to say slumlords, but that are against tenants' rights and such, that the influence of the board can be very huge in repairing those issues, getting them to come up to code and avoiding tenants facing.
Well, yes, the commissions are advisory and actually make decisions. So we make decisions on disputes, and then we also make recommendations to the county council and the county executive on policies.
Let me ask you this: boards and commissions going on. You're a good friend of our county executive, many members of our county council. You're one of the leaders in our community. One of the bones I have picked with in these boards and commissions is not so much in Montgomery County, but our underrepresentation on almost every one of these at the state level. We are the populace. We are the economic engine. We have, quite frankly, we have more smart people who deal with things at the national level than any other jurisdiction.
Right.
And yet, we are so underrepresented. And I look at the state, and when we look at the state is here, our county, then the sort of level of action, and the state goes down, and then up to the federal government again. What can we do?
We all have to do it. We just have to do a better job.
How can we do that?
I think.
How can you lead that to make sure that we are, work with all these leaders?
I think
that you're
we
with?
have to have a summit and get all the leaders together and get them to publicize it better. Is one way.
Apply. Maybe people aren't
But
applying.
I don't think the openings for the state boards and commissions are as available. The publicity about them is as available.
You've enjoyed your time on the commission?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's
and you're going to keep going with other
rewarding.
commissions and boards as they go on as you get term limited out?
Yeah,
I hope so,
definitely,
Jeff.
Definitely.
Listen, thank you all. Thank you very much. Our time is ended. I want to thank you for being here today. And I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for being with us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm your host, Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.